all about the United Kingdom, international touring, and practice with Margaret Cookhorn. Stay inspired. Margaret and Nikolai, having you both here, I just wanted to dive into this wonderful bassoon section and ask y'all if there are any concert highlights that you could share with us about. Margaret, would you like to share?
The most recent highlight, fabulous concert, was a few days ago. A Ravel program, yay! In which we did, the CBSO did both Ravel piano concertos. So in the first half, we did Ravel concerto in G, and in the second half, started with the left-hand piano concerto. So obviously it features both of us doing, obviously, Nikolai playing right at the top end, and I'm playing right at the low end. So yeah, it was definitely a bassoon festival this past week.
Do y'all have a favorite tour that you've done together that you could share with us? I think it's so special with the City of Birmingham Orchestra how y'all tour so much.
I was very fortunate to join the orchestra 1 year before the pandemic and have done I think around 4 tours with the orchestra so far. I think the first tour I joined, which was a very long one, was my favorite because it was really long. We did some amazing repertoire. We did Firebird I think around 15 times, which was such a pleasure to do, and I really got to know my colleagues very well and to know the orchestra in a different way than you would when you're back in Birmingham. So that was my favorite tour.
Do anything come to mind of things that you love in a section?
One thing that springs to mind is when the orchestra did some performances of Shostakovich's Lady Macbeth. And there are sections in that which is just for first bassoon and contra. And that was just after Nikolai had started, in fact. That was such fun. But fantastic writing. Shostakovich uses bassoon and contra really, really well. So have we got Shostakovich coming up? I think we have.
We probably do, and actually, Margaret, you just stole my answer because I was thinking of the same. That was, I think, really one of the first times, because it was just after I joined. It was really one time where it was we really kind of started to build this kind of section sound together, and funny enough, we did Shostakovich 5 in the middle of it. In the middle of the opera runs, and it was just, I mean, it's such a feast for first bassoon and contra to get to do these things together. So no, I mean, also what there are so many great things in the big repertoire for bassoon and contra, and even as we just said, this Ravel week was good fun. Of course, we don't play together that way, but the kind of support that you get from one another, having to do a big solo, and we both have to do some big things, but we are there supporting each other both on stage and off stage. It's very important as a section that you do get along as good colleagues both on and off stage, and I think we're very lucky to have that in our section.
Absolutely.
Margaret, I wanted to ask about your bassoon and contrabassoon playing and having a successful switch between bassoon and contrabassoon.
Oh, so for me, doubling actually started well before I'd even taken up contrabassoon. In fact, really thinking about when I was at school, I remember I was involved in dealing with the music for the school play. And the teacher at the time, he got me to play a little bit of side drum, tambourine, recorder, bassoon, all these different instruments. And I have to say, I absolutely loved it. I thought, this is great. I really like, going from one to the other to the other. So it's always interested me playing more than one instrument. But of course, when I went to music college, I thought, right, I've got to focus on bassoon. But when I saw the contra, I thought, aha. Yes, this is what I also want to learn. I'm sure if it was a whole, family of instruments, I'd learn them all. But I just thought, yes, this is where I'm wanting to learn contra. So Switching for me personally, it's just, from one to the other to the other. I know a lot of people in the business that don't like it. They complain about the reed, they complain about the clef, they complain this, that, don't like this, blah, 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 blah. And I just get on with it, really. Just get on with it. Just play one. I think the fundamental thing about doubling is that you've got to know that particular instrument really, really well. You've really got to know your fingering. And I think this is where a lot of people come stuck. They don't know fingering because they're having to think about, what do I do here? And when I'm switching, usually I'm thinking about how many bars in which I have to switch. So I'm counting those bars, changing instruments, making sure a reed's ready, and just getting on with the job, really. And it keeps me amused. I think if I had to play bassoon, the longest I've ever had to play bassoon without touching the contra in my career was 2 months. And I have to say I was crawling up the wall after a while because I really wanted to get back to playing contra. So it's a case of if people are serious about playing contra, they need to go away, learn fingerings, because this is where they really get stuck. They don't know the fingerings, they're having to think.
I wanted to ask about mentorship and teaching, Margaret, and are there any things that come to mind with some of your previous mentors and teachers that you really appreciated in them, that you strive to do with your students?
Regarding mentors, I didn't have one because I got the job very, very young. I was 22 when I joined the orchestra. So as regarding a mentor, I didn't have one. I had my teachers, and once I joined the orchestra, their advice was, congratulations, now the next thing you need to do is to keep it. So get on with it. And I remember approaching another bassoonist in another orchestra saying, can I have a lesson? And their reply was, no, go away and learn. It seems to be it was then, all those years ago, like the English attitude, you've got a job, you'll learn a lot when you're in the job, mm-hmm. So you just get on with it. I used one or two things we used to have lessons from William Waterhouse, so one or two of his things that he used to say to us as a class, I use in teaching today. And at the time it felt very avant-garde, even though it's actually quite commonplace. His ideas were seen as quite, really, should you be saying that? But it's out there now, and very inspirational. His recordings of the, say, Britten Nocturne and with the Melos Ensemble, because Benjamin Britten wrote pieces with William Waterhouse in mind. I mean, they're terrific. I think the way people, I'm sure it's the way, like with Nikolai's teacher, how he's being taught now is quite commonplace about the breathing and all this. I mean, Nikolai can talk about that. But when William Waterhouse was talking about it and was demonstrating, I mean, there are certain things I'm not going to talk about now. You would never dare do to a student, you wouldn't dare put your hand on a student now, and, it just felt alien. But in his words, he would say, well, you're not going to learn unless I do this, that, and the other kind of mm-hmm. thing. Nowadays, there are different ways of demonstrating how to do, show breathing and this type of thing. And, so, yeah.
Bassoon playing in the UK, are there any things that y'all would want to share about working there?
I think style-wise, for me personally, within the orchestra, it's very international. If you're looking for a British style, it tends to be quite small.
Mm.
I mean, obviously, you'd have to ask someone from the outside looking in. Mm-hmm. And I think with the British style, people would have their various personalities. There's a cause of concern amongst older people in the profession, saying things like everyone's sounding the same. Mm. Why aren't we sounding, this, that, and the other? And I remember when I was learning, particularly on contra, I thought, well, I wanted to sound like me. I didn't want to sound like, and I don't sound like anyone else. I just sound like me. But it was just kind of creating my own sound, which fortunately people like. That kind of thing. But there's this, yes, you know, we should think more international.
Well, I think that in terms of the UK orchestras, one of the very unique things that I experienced. Just have to follow up. Richard, you said you couldn't hear me very well. Is it better now? It's good now. That's very good. Just needed to be sure. So I found that I knew already when I moved here, but one of the things about the UK orchestras are that they do not have so much rehearsal time. They play a lot of music in a very short time. Sometimes we do 2 programs a week. Sometimes we do 3 programs a week. Some orchestras do even more. And it's the thing about not having a lot of rehearsal time is I think there are pros and cons to everything. I have done some of my most exciting concerts with the CBSO because even though you would not have rehearsed every bar to like as well as one might wish for, the excitement and the energy that goes into it is kind of like, okay, now here we go. It needs to work. We have a full hall, and now the conductor starts. So I think the excitement and this feeling of being on the edge of the chair is very impressive. How the UK orchestras can kind of maintain that with the amount of music they go through, and obviously you have to be quite the side reader to get through the job here, which I am really working on. But I hope it's already gotten a little better. At least now we're starting to repeat repertoire. So some of them I have done that a few times with the orchestra already, and that's a nice feeling. But no, it certainly is one of the big things here that rehearsal time should not be. It's not necessarily always the only way to an exciting performance. And then again, sometimes it's you feel very nervous having a symphony where you about to turn the page and you don't really know what's on the next page.
Margaret, I wanted to ask you about some contrabassoon solos and any solos that come to mind that you could share with us to maybe check out.
Well, it just so happens that I dug out this piece that was written for me. I don't know if you can see that.
Yes.
Okay, so this was written for me back in 2002, 2004, and which I performed at the IDRS in 2009. He wrote them as a present, and I said, you should get them published, and they've only just recently been published. So please, everyone, you know, go to your music libraries at university and get them to order it, you know. So, yes. As regarding solo work, well, I think people should play what they like, really. There's quite a few contrabassoon works out there, which are some are okay. I think it's personal taste, you know, just playing what you like. I like playing Bach. In fact, I've got this study book. Here's another one this is another book that I like to use. Don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, and I was going to mention the solo Margaret shared. It was by Colin Matthews, and then what was the name of that one for you, Margaret?
That's this one.
2 Studies for Contrabassoon. Beautiful.
Yes. So I mean they're not easy, but they're good pieces actually, and I think everyone should play them.
Taking contra seriously, do you have a practice routine that you could share with us that you do with maintaining your playing?
As I say, I use this book.
The Hofmeister, yeah.
And the thing is with contra is that when people look at contra music, they usually see minims and semi-briefs. They usually see big notes and they think, oh, this is really easy. But when I'm practicing contra, if I open this Bach book, it's full of things like that.
Lots of notes.
Things like that. And I find when I'm playing to have that facility like I would on the bassoon, is very, very important to have on contra. So I'm spending my time practicing, you know, that kind of music from Bach, because if you think of Bach, Beethoven 9, Missa Solemnis, they have a lot of notes, you see. So it's good to have that kind of facility. I also look at the tuba repertoire, particularly their study books. I'm not going to mention the names. I think everyone needs to go and find their own study book. But there are various study books for tuba, which I'll use. And that's really good for, particularly for low notes, because people forget contra plays low notes. So I need to find something that's going to get me in the low register often, because this Bach book, I mean, I'm all over the place, you know. So I will raid the tuba repertoire, the tuba study books. I've got this book by Bach for facility. And then for added fun, which is what I really, really like, is that I will then go and raid the double bass orchestral excerpt repertoire book. And I'll go through and I'll think, like, what shall I play? I'll play some Bruckner, or I'll play, and of course, these are parts that I'm never going to play in the orchestra, but I'm having such a good time playing them. And that's just another way of keeping the play and the stamina going, because obviously string parts don't have as many bars rest as, say, a wind player would. So it's just looking at those areas. And these are things that I've kind of like worked out for myself, really. It's nothing that my teacher said, you must go and do this or this. I find the contra excerpt books are okay. They are full of errors, though, to get around copyright. They are full of, you know, so I try and collect parts whenever I can, you know, for my own reference. And, you know, those parts can be useful. I think when you're practicing, you should have a good time. I think that's so important. And to remember why you're doing it. That's another thing as well. So, in fact, when I was preparing for the Ravel Left Hand, my husband was talking to a friend of his in Amsterdam, and I actually played it on my husband's phone, and he sent it to his friend in Amsterdam. So, so it's just a good way of just kind of just play it. I'll just send it to him. It's like a mini concert, you see. Well, with breathing, that's an interesting one, because my teacher smoked 40 a day, and he continued to smoke 40 a day until the day he died. I never saw him do one bit of exercise, yet could really hold all these low notes. So again, you know, it was a question I never asked him. He always used to say things like, go figure, or it will play itself. That was his way of dealing. So I'd go away and sort something out. So obviously the contra reed plays a huge part in sustaining. It's something, and of course, on how you feel mentally as well. Because if you're feeling anxious, playing long notes is hard, can be really, really hard. So I have to kind of get in the right mindset. And it's interesting for some composers, when they have long notes, I quite like playing their long notes compared with others. So, for example, if it's Mahler Das Lied or something like that, I don't mind that I like those. If it's Richard Strauss, you think, oh, really? And you could be playing a very, very, very long time. So those are much more, I'm having to really, really, but after a while, I just think, I'll just take a breath, you know. We're only human after all. And sometimes these composers, they write these long, I just think, I'm just going to take a breath. And sometimes as well, one needs to say, right, I'm going to make an executive decision. I'm going to breathe here. If it's by myself, you can always breathe, you know, imperceptibly. You know, if something else is going on, you can breathe then. But yes, it's kind of like, I suppose it's kind of like the equivalent of deep sea diving. I mean, I'm not a swimmer, but if you think of people diving without any help and holding because obviously on the instruments, some notes to sustain are easier than others for some weird reason. So, for example, if I'm playing low D, that's okay, or a low E, but playing a low B sustained is actually quite hard. It's because of, I don't know, the resistance of the note could be. I mean, other people may have other opinions and they think everything's this, but for me personally, there are certain notes, where it's easier than others.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I go to the bassoon, well, I'm laughing because it's dead easy on the bassoon. I go and play low Bs, low B flats. I'm thinking, what's everyone making a fuss about here? Nothing. This is
Mm-hmm.
nothing. Of course, because of the pitch, where notes are. I mean, when I hear oboe players crying because they have a middle C and they're saying this is a low note, and I'm going, seriously, no, it's not a low note. Again, is that changing that mindset? That yes, I have the low notes around here, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's all, these things come into play and you think, well, it is what it is. Let's deal with it.
More about your experience playing for BBC Proms, and you shared in your interview about doing the presenting following that, and how all these opportunities, evolve from, your performance. And so I was thinking about, just stepping from the orchestra and then also from soloist to then being this presenter for the radio. Can you share a bit more about just, what it was like being a presenter and radio host, and things that you found, from your practice? Did those, and playing, did that help with and presenting on the radio?
So when I did the prom in 2015, like I said to you in my interview, it opened doors. People were contacting me to do this, that, and the other. And a year later, a producer was creating a new program called Inside Music, which is still on BBC Radio 3 now, and asked me to host a radio program where I had to choose the music and talk about the music. And learning from that, I think it's just so important to be yourself, be true to yourself, and just say as it is, rather than to kind of create a persona or act. You just had to really, it was really enjoyable. I chose the music and you talk about the music and talk about life experiences. And, I mentioned, a piece of music was from when I was at school and that kind of thing. And so much so, they asked me to do a second program a year later. So, and then I also was one of the BBC Radio 3 New Generation Voices, and that was coming along, and then the pandemic hit, and then it's all gone very, very quiet since then. And I just learned some tips and tricks on how things are from the radio end, and of course they wanted people from different backgrounds to present programs. So the skills from playing, from presenting, and also, I mean, I'm not afraid to speak on stage now. I've found since then, I think if you stand in front of 7,000 people, you can stand in front of anyone. So that kind of thing, and it's just being true to yourself. And it's like talking to a friend, really, when you're talking on radio. It's not this flowery, because I'm not really a book reader. I don't devour books, and I feel as I've got better things to do in my practice. So, so, so it's kind of like when you're writing for radio, it's like talking to a friend. So you would write it as is.
Was there anything fascinating behind the scenes where, or that you could share with us?
The only thing was that if you're doing an orchestral recording for a record or whatever, usually the red light comes on. But in a radio studio, a green light comes on. And I'm sure if recording companies changed light from red to green, I think players wouldn't feel so freaked out. Oh my God, the red light's on, I've got to play. I'm sure if they put on a green light and they say, okay, off you go. And, they even dim the lights in a radio studio to make it all cozy and, as if you're kind of like, in a bar somewhere and they're just talking to, like, one-on-one. The other thing, when one's reading a script on radio, they also talk about the flow. So obviously when we're taking in a good amount of air to play a phrase, when you're speaking on radio, it's a similar thing. You're taking a good amount of air, and then you're like making a big phrase. And that's one of the things I did learn from the radio producers. You know, they talk about flow. I suppose they do that in acting, I think. I don't know.
I wanted to ask you about a course from university and also just with your students now. Is there something that you wish was offered to your students?
I was at music college a very, 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 very long time ago. I mean, it was so long ago, they'd only just started teaching conducting. That's how long ago I was at music college. And I think I had one conducting session. Obviously now it's more commonplace. Looking back, I don't regret anything. I had a great time. I mean, I just got stuck in with a lot of opportunities, and I was just playing. I was there to play more than anything else. So looking back, I don't feel I've missed out on anything, because I can do it now if I want to. And of course, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have all that then, you see. So obviously these are things that we've had to learn since then.
Margaret, we just touched on reading and books, but I was wondering if there was a book that had been influential for you.
Book? Oh, I'll tell you what's good to read. Any sports magazine, any runners magazines, any fitness magazines. I think those I find much more interesting, because they relate to music so much, particularly with preparation for sports day, that kind of thing. So I would say Runner's World, all these running, these magazines, I would find time to read them and try and relate them to what I'm doing than to read a particular music book.
We'd love to hear the story around your bassoon, if you like, and contrabassoon.
So currently in the orchestra, I'm very, 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 very lucky. I have 2 Heckel bassoons. I have a 13,000 and a 16,000. Both I bought from new, so they're both made for me. I have 2 Mollenhauer contrabassoons. One is quite old, more or less from when I joined the orchestra. I bought them from new. And then in the mid-1990s, I bought a second one. And I'm not buying any more. That's it. When I joined the orchestra, I played on a Fox Renard bassoon, and I didn't own a contra. So when I joined, I knew I was starting from zero with purchasing instruments. And the orchestra, they said, well, you could buy, we could buy it for you. And I thought, well, no, I'd rather have my own. So it was a contra, then a Heckel, then a contra, then a Heckel. So that's the order I bought them in. With crooks, or vocals, I should say, on the Heckel, I play on CC1. No, CC2, sorry, CC2. Reason being, if I'm playing second, obviously I'm at the lower end. So I like my notes to be a bit on the flatter side. So, and on Mollenhauer, I just use their Mollenhauer crook. I know a lot of players who use a Heckel crook, but I just think the Mollenhauer ones are fine. So I use the Mollenhauer crook, and that's what works for me.
Do you have 2 contrabassoons?
One at work and one at home. And then, as Nikolai knows, if I've got any solo things, I bring one in, my best one in, and I swap them around. And although that might change now, Nikolai. So yes, so I like my contras. I mean, I do like one more than the other. I think you'd have to ask Nikolai that question.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, I understand. Or just within the section and what fits. That's a good point of just the sound that you want to create as a section. Yeah.
What I'm hearing is different from what someone else is hearing.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. And how special that you can, just kind of collaborate on that and use different ones. I don't know any other orchestras. Maybe Richard, y'all may know, but with two contrabassoons. So that's, yeah, very exciting. Yeah, Nikolai, did you want to share any thoughts?
I think with Margaret is Margaret is very fortunate to have two good contrabassoons. Absolutely. I have mostly played with Margaret on one of them, and we play very easily together on that one. And then actually, the reason Margaret said it might change, I think it's because the last week when she was doing the Ravel, she was playing on her should we say the one that lives at home, and it's such a fantastic instrument because it has this um, really purity in the sound, very focused and very clear, which just make it. I mean, it makes it very soloistic, and really shows the character um, that Margaret wanted to portray, I think, and that's it's really easy to play on top of, say, the octave above and all these things. Margaret and I, we sometimes we do exercises together where we play um, different things, so like octaves together, um, and different chords, and try to find out where's the sound we want, where's the intonation we want, what kind of balance do we want. So it's not always only in the orchestra that because we have so many notes to get through. It's actually really a pleasure just to stand and just play some long notes and really try to enjoy each other's sound, and that's something I think it's very important to build a section. It was something I also did a lot with colleagues in Danish radio, that we also stood and did octaves and different chords together, and not only listening, also kind of having a little communication about where do you find it to be perfect, what can we experiment with, trying this more like that, blah, blah, blah. We all know the rules. We all know that a major third should be flat. We all know that, but have we just been taught that? Let's try and see how we can push the boundaries, and what does it mean if it's more one way or another, um, and then if we find out, okay, there was a reason we were taught that, then it's even more kind of, there's even more reason that we do it. So I think it's very important to stand together and play and enjoy each other's sound and experience. And I think also with instruments, it's very interesting because Margaret is playing a Hegel 16,000 in the orchestra, early 16,000. Well, obviously they haven't gone that far yet with them, to my knowledge. But I play also an early 16,000. So actually, our instruments are very very similar, which makes it uh, I think easier to blend the sounds when you have two very similar instruments. It does make it easier. It's definitely not impossible to play two different brands and everything, because at the end of the day you would just kind of sound like yourself, I think, on no matter what instrument. But I think we have a slight advantage at mixing sounds because we have so similar instruments, and same with the Mollenhauer. It really works very easily, I think.
Question from Richard, and it's, how different are your two Mollenhauers? And he says mine was made about in 1972.
Oh, okay. So my first Mollenhauer was made in 1987. That was the year I joined the orchestra. And my second one was made in 1995. And I've always felt with my second one, it was never quite set up how I wanted it. I have to work much harder with the top register. So I had that one overhauled. I went back to Mollenhauer and had it overhauled. And it's better. I don't know, there's just something about the first one. I don't know. Because Mollenhauer don't only make contras, they make bassoons, they make recorders, they make all kinds of things, you know. But yeah, I think that's. I felt with my 1995 one, I had to blow in much more than the 87 one. But you know, they're perfectly adequate. But if I'm doing something like Mother Goose or something like that, then I will go back to my first one. Definitely, it's much easier.
Margaret, Richard has shared in acoustics, the Mollenhauer has very little energy on the fundamental, but very strong higher harmonics.
What does that mean?
Beautiful, creamy sound that projects wonderfully. Richard shared, in acoustics, we compare it with the Heckel contra, which has more energy on the fundamental.
The Heckel contras I've tried some that are brand new and some that are old. I mean, they make gorgeous sounds, but I find their sounds are very small. And I prefer something that's going to project throughout the orchestra. In the UK, there's quite a few of us that play on Mollenhauers. There are one or two players that have now gone to older Heckles, but for me personally, I want to be able to be the bass in Brahms 1 when there's no tuba, that kind of thing. Or if we do, dare I say, wind band, you know, it's important that I am the bass. I mean, we do have a tuba, but my sound needs to come through. I mean, Nicola, I don't know if you've had it. Did you play on a Heckel in Danish radio?
Oh, I cannot really. I don't really have a driver's license for contra, but I always find that my experience playing with contrabassoons are that the Heckel and the Mollenhauer somehow have always been the easiest instruments to blend with. I think it's a little bit as what Richard says with the higher harmonics, because it's very easy to blend in the octave above and the third above. It's they're quite clear in the overtones. Um, so I've always found that it's quite easy to play with Heckel and Mollenhauer. Of course, also other brands are absolutely great to blend with. But I think it's just with any kind of contrabassoon, I find same with normal bassoon that if the if the high speed of air is always there, if it's always an active sound, then I can always more easily kind of blend into that, because I've always found that if it's a kind of a relaxed sound and maybe the instrument doesn't have so much resistance, so you can just kind of let the air like through and it'll still make a sound, then I find that I cannot really um, play. I can maybe kind of hide on top of it, but I cannot really um, play contribute in the on the higher octaves. So I think no matter the instrument, it's just about this kind of activity in the air, and then yeah, just this whatever sound you have in your head will hopefully come through.
Margaret, thank you so much for this wonderful discussion. And thank you so much, Nikolai, for joining.